The views and opinions of the host and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
Good morning and welcome to Guardian Radio AM. Today is Friday and it's 11th of October and it is a little after 11 o'clock in the morning. And once again, this is CA Newry and I shall be your host for the day as we have a Constitutional Friday. Actually, we had a Constitutional Day last week, Friday, and a number of things we weren't able to conclude on. So again, in order to, who will be here will be Professor Sydney MacArthur Walter Thompson, who's going to be here to assist me in just dealing with one or two issues I have with the Bahamas in general and whether we are following what is prescribed in the Constitution. Professor Thompson should be joining me on the telephone line. I'm just going to make sure that he is on, producer. If he's on, not yet, he's going to be calling me in a few seconds, where we will continue to prod him to answer one or two questions. I know the professor inboxed me earlier and said that he couldn't get through to the line, so I'm just hoping that he calls now, and because we're looking at the switchboard right now, and that he will be able to connect him on the conversation. Last week, we were talking about whether it was constitutional for the Minister of National Security to openly criticize the independent Director of Public Prosecution, right? He had some concerns about bail. He said that the director, personally, in his person, was not aggressive in terms of objecting to bail in general. I'm trying to see the right words he said. He wanted to reduce bail offenders who release on bail, and he had an issue with it. He said that there are too many people with ankle bracelets who are not living up to their release movement, and that they are repeating and getting bail. And he was objecting to that, and he had a meeting with the Director of Public Prosecution, and they came up with having a member from the Commissioner of Police Legal Office, Chief Superintendent Roger Thompson, who, with his team, who's at the Commissioner of the Police Legal Office, is going to be aggressively appealing those persons who are on bail, who has abused their bail requirements, and they're going to go and appeal this issue. One of the issues that was concerning that persons, Bahamians, according to the Constitution, has a constitutional right to receive bail, right? Particularly when they do not have a speedy trial. So, according to the Constitution, there's a number of length of time that one should take before they have a trial set, right? So you cannot be locked up, charged, and there's no trial coming up about. After a certain amount of time, I think it's 6 months, and someone can call me and correct me, that because the trial didn't come up, they didn't start, then you get bail. And what the Minister of National Security is saying, that even though the trial has not come up and that they have no idea when the trial will come up and that you are innocent until proven guilty because you had abused, because you did not follow your bail release, that you should be put back in jail, right? And spend a period of time without going through the court, without being found guilty, and because you abuse your bail requirements. And that's what we're going to be talking about firstly with the professor. Is that constitutional? Now, and let me break it down, because you see I'm stuttering over my words and I'm trying to not bias the conversation by putting words in the Minister of National Security mouth. I'm trying to put the argument forward so the general listening audience can understand what is happening? We have a crime problem. Let's start off with that. We seem to have a recidivism regarding criminals who are, in lack of a better word, murderers. There are a number of accused murderers who are on bail, right? And they commit other acts whilst they're on bail. Now, mind you, we don't know if these persons are guilty because the court system is backlogged and they're innocent until proven guilty, and justice is blind, even though we can look and say, man, this person is sinister and evil and more than likely guilty. But we have a system. You got to be go through the court of law and found guilty, and then you have to spend time. Until then, you are innocent until proven guilty. And this is to protect innocent people from being locked up, and then later on you found guilty. Now, imagine this. I'm setting up the scenario. Imagine this. You are accused of a crime, right? And circumstances happen and that you are charged, and the case never came up. The case didn't come up. And, of course, because of that, the judge give you bail and say, okay, tell the court system, hey, you all get your ducks in a row. This person can be on bail until you able to prosecute them. And according to this scenario and this narrative, they do another crime. Or no, let me change it. They are accused, because we're not sure if they're guilty or not. They're accused of doing another crime, right? And okay, I see MacArthur is on. Sidney MacArthur is on the line. So let me set up the scenario so Mr. Professor Thompson can answer me. So now that you are on bail and you are accused of another crime, what the Minister of National Security is saying that bail should be revoked, right? Even though you haven't been found guilty of the first crime, nor have you been found guilty of the second crime, you should now be serving time, whatever the amount of time, until that court case, perhaps in the future, 5, 10, 20 years, exaggerating there, comes into fruition. And that's where the issue is. Is that constitutional? I know he means well, but this is why justice is blind. It forces the judiciary to be accountable. But I have Sidney MacArthur, Walter Thompson on, professor, who gives commentary about the Constitution. He's an expert, some say, and I have him online, and I want him to give some commentary about that. Is that constitutional? What the Minister of National Security? I hope he heard the narrative I was given. Professor, are you there?
I'm right here, Brother Newry, and good morning to you, and good morning to the audience.
And good morning to you, too. And thanks very much for committing to the show again. Yeah. The scenario I was given is the constitutional right for bail, right? And scenario saying that if you are unable to, the courts, the judicial system, and unable to prosecute, to adjudicate the person in a timely manner, that person automatically gets bail or can apply for bail. Am I right there in that narrative?
Brother Newry, you asked a very interesting question. The thing is that if the Constitution, and it does allow for bail under certain conditions, no minister, no statute law could supersede the Constitution. If there is a problem, then you have to deal with the problem. But you just can't willy-nilly jump up and say, you're going to do this and you're going to do that, because then that creates more problems. I believe that we have to operate, if we were operating strictly according to the Constitution, we wouldn't having all these problems. In fact, the way how the Minister of National Security went about it is totally wrong, completely wrong. What was even said by him publicly should not have been said publicly. If there was a problem, as he claimed that the prosecutors for the police were complaining to him, go and talk to the Attorney General. If there is a problem with the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Attorney General could fix that. The Director of Public Prosecution is not an independent Director of Public Prosecution. So we got to get the facts as they are. The Constitution does not say that. You have the Office of Director of Public Prosecution. Now, if there is a problem with him, talk to the Attorney General. The Attorney General could either give him one, an oral declaration or a thing to do, or he can give him a written declaration, what he would want him to do. And he has to do it. He cannot say, Attorney General, I ain't checking for you. It cannot happen. It's in the document. So if there was a problem, all he had to do was go to the Attorney General and let the Attorney General deal with the Director of Public Prosecution. Now, I understood that you had the State Minister and I believe the Commissioner of Police and some other person who was supposed to be meeting on this. But I think the way he went about it was completely unconstitutional.
But Professor, they had the meeting already, right? And they came to a conclusion, and the conclusion is they're going to use the office, the Commissioner of Police Legal Office.
You can allow it for me.
Sorry about that. I'm trying to get this mic directly in front of me. I'm going to bring it down.
Please,
okay. They're going to use the Commissioner of Police Legal Office. They have the Commissioner of Police have his own legal team, and that does prosecution. So they're going to use a member of the Commissioner of Police Legal Office, right? And he and his team is going to be responsible for aggressively pursuing persons who abuse or did not carry out their bail requirements, and go and to the judge and demand that they do not get bail.
Okay, now that's a different case altogether.
Yeah, so this is
you see what I'm saying?
Go ahead.
I understood the problem was with the Director of Public Prosecutions.
That's how the narrative started, but apparently that's not how it ended.
Well, then what are they talking about then? Don't you think they should know this?
They were saying that they had 2 points I took note of. One was that junior prosecuting or lawyers are assigned to these cases. And
who assigned them?
I guess the Director of Public Prosecution. And that he's saying that he's noticing that the criminals are getting senior KCs to defend themselves. And instead of the Director of Public Prosecution go and be the prosecutor himself, he's sending junior officers.
Oh, you sent some junior officers.
So that's what he's saying. And now I'm seeing that what he's saying that the police legal team, the Commissioner of Police Legal Office, have better. That's why I interpret it now, because they have a team now they want to replace the prosecutors in the Attorney General office, that they have senior or better or seasoned police officers who can do a better job, and they want them to be assigned to these cases. That's how what I interpreted of it.
So if I understand you correctly now, because it seems like there seems to be a conflict right in there, because the Director of Public Prosecutions is responsible for all prosecutions in his office. The police office, that's a different office altogether. So are they saying that, if I understand you correctly now, because I'm trying to understand this conundrum they got here, whether they're going to have police prosecutors working in the Office of Director of Public Prosecution.
No, it didn't seem to say that. It says that they would be from the Commissioner of Police Legal Office. And this Chief Superintendent, Roger Thompson, is going to be responsible for aggressively pursuing the revocations in the Supreme Court of persons who are on bail but abuse their bail requirements. And that this office is going to be responsible for pursuing that in the court.
Okay, that's fine.
And then it was mentioned that also that there were junior prosecutors who are going up against senior. Lawyers. Okay. And that the Minister of National Security had issues with that, and that he's meeting to make sure that doesn't happen. And if it does happen, he prefer to, how I interpret it, he preferred to have police officers, senior police officers, be the prosecutors.
So now, where does the Director of Public Prosecution fit into that?
He is being held responsible and saying that basically he do the case management. That's what the word they use there, case management, and that he is the one who's badly assigning prosecutors to go up against these senior lawyers.
So now it would be the Commissioner of Police who would be assigning people.
I only can presume. I only can presume.
But see, Brother Newry, it shouldn't even be like that. We need to have a clear demarcation. One, Director of Public Prosecution. Two, Commissioner of Police. Two different offices altogether. There shouldn't be any clashing between the judiciary and the executive. Obviously, that's what came out. Mm-hmm. A clash between the judiciary and the executive. That isn't supposed to be, Brother Newry.
But there definitely seems to be a clash.
Huh?
There definitely seems to be a clash.
Now
there seems to be debate.
Who's who? Saying nothing. The Minister of National Security made an error, a big error. And you need to admit that to the public. Because, see, you cannot have a situation where the Director of Public Prosecutions supposed to be responsible for certain things. Now there is a problem, as I understand it now, where he has been appointing junior personnel to go up against these senior veterans who could run circles around them. That's cause for concern. I don't have a problem with that. But now how do you fix it? Are you saying that you're going to have police prosecutors taking over from the Director of Public Prosecution?
And that's all subjective. I'm not saying that is what is being concluded.
Yeah, but then they need to make it clear. See, that's the problem with these people, They never make things crystal clear so that the average person can understand. Even I don't understand what they're doing. But I do know this. The offices are different. They come under different ministries. The Director of Public Prosecutions, Attorney General, is responsible to him. The Commissioner of Police come under the Minister of National Security. So look, they got one mixing up in here.
And what I found entertaining is that the Minister of National Security mentioned that the senior officers, right, are frustrated at the DPP office, saying that after all the hard work, right, they seen all of this mismanagement happening, and they getting disenfranchised.
Okay.
But I've heard. But let me make this point. I've heard also from lawyers who see the senior police officers, they're acting as lawyers and say, man, these people aren't competent at all. They shouldn't be prosecuting at all. They're going back and forth. Both have criticism. Both are calling each other, say, man, they ain't competent. And I'm concerned about that. And
no, you have to be concerned.
But this narrative shouldn't be in the public. But
no, it should not be. And that's where the Minister of National Security made his big mistake.
Yes, but I have a text here, and then I have a phone call with someone who wants to engage you. The first text says, anyone who violates their bail condition, their bail should be automatically revoked, and they should set in jail for a minimum of a year before being eligible for bail again. If they commit a serious crime, there should be no bail period. And I'm saying, is that in the Constitution, or is that breaking the Constitution?
That you ask. And that's why you have to ask, because it talks about them, they get cases coming up within a reasonable period of time.
In a reasonable period of time.
All I'm saying is that we have a major problem now with a lot of killings going on, 113 plus, that have occurred for this 1 year. And I can understand the police being concerned. I don't have a problem with that. What I would like to see the executive do is to get this thing cleared up so you don't have this confusion between the Director of Public Prosecutions and the Commissioner of Police. We don't need that. With all these lives being lost, we just had another one just get killed the other day. I think it was last night or the night before.
Last night.
As soon as they announced that the storm had passed, there was a murder. That's rather sad. No, I'm concerned that the police are concerned, and I can understand the frustration by the commissioner himself. But the point is, it seems to be a problem with the Director of Public Prosecutions. That's the understanding I'm getting. And if it's a problem with him functioning in that office, the Attorney General ought to know what to do. You just can't leave an incompetent, if I might use that word, personality in an office and not performing up to par, just creating more confusion. So the understanding is, as I hear from you and what has been said, the problem rests with the Director of Public Prosecution. That's where you got to fix it.
Professor, I have a call on the line. Let me
okay.
Engage them to see if they have any commentary on
Yes,
this.
sir, yeah.
Go ahead, caller. Caller, can you hear me? Can we move to the next caller then? Go ahead, caller. Caller, can you hear me?
David is back in the West, along with you and Mr. Thompson and Newry.
Let there be justice in this land.
Justice, law and order.
Yeah.
But what I want to ask, right?
Go ahead.
What's the difference between... Well, I know that the Constitution trumps any law, but when it comes to the penal code, I would like for Mr. Thompson to explain to me the act of the penal code pertaining to law and the Constitution. Thank you.
Reasonable question. Thanks very much.
Yeah, that's a reasonable question. The penal code cannot supersede constitutional law. That's it. Now, if the penal code has something in it that is not contrary to constitutional law, fine. They could go ahead and work it straight through. That's not a problem. The conflict only comes up when the Constitution says persons are entitled to specific rights. And so if you have a statute law or a minister decides he's going to make up his mind on something because he's in the office, and that what is done is unconstitutional, that's wrong. You have to resolve that problem according to what the supreme law says. As long as the statute law doesn't conflict with the Constitution, then it could go forward. There's not a problem there. But from what I understand, it seems as if that the problem rests with the Director of Public Prosecution. And that's where the Attorney General needs to get his act together and deal with it. But when you have this conflicting between the police and the Office of Attorney General or the Office of Director of Public Prosecutions, that can create further problems. I don't think that should be. And the Constitution is designed where the judiciary ought to operate one way, the executive ought to operate a certain way, and the Parliament ought to operate a certain way, the legislature. There should be no clashing. In fact, these particular personalities in these offices, the Commissioner of Police, Director of Public Prosecution, they should have their lines clearly marked out so there is no confusion. Right now, all we have is a bunch of confusion, and someone is going to make some serious mistakes because we don't seem to have this thing down packed, where the Commissioner has certain responsibilities, the Director of Public Prosecution has certain responsibilities, the Minister himself, I know he get all mixed up like that, has certain responsibilities, and the Attorney General has certain responsibilities.
The Attorney General has yet to make any comments about this exchange between the Minister of National Security and the DPP. I know the minister, the junior minister, the Minister of Justice, he joined in on the conversation or the meeting, but I haven't heard any official position. And in fact, it seems to be about procedure and policy, right? And I'm not sure if the DPP can give commentary on policy. Right,
no,
I would assume that to be the Attorney General, but I just was watching him.
The Attorney General has that authority.
I just watch.
The DPP, let me put it this way, the Director of Public Prosecutions is not an independent person. He is only independent insofar as he deems in his head to prosecute somebody. He may decide today, say, I can prosecute Mr. Thompson. He has that authority to do that. Now, you got to have good reason for so doing. But all I'm saying is that he is not independent in that office apart from the Attorney General.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Attorney General hasn't said anything. I don't know why it's been lingering for so long. He should have acted on it very quickly. See, that's where you have problems. I don't know how the commissioner get up in this all together like this.
Mm-hmm.
So when he doesn't act responsibly in the office, I don't necessarily blame the Director of Public Prosecution because he has the Attorney General who's supposed to give him certain directives as to how he should be performing. And if the problem, and from what I understand that has been said to me today, the problem seems to rest with the Director of Public Prosecution. And the Commissioner is upset. You can't blame him for that. And the police prosecutors are upset. You can't blame them for that. But it's a matter that needs to be resolved, and the Attorney General needs to get on it and deal with it accordingly. Because he is the minister. Now, that fellow who says state minister, ain't no such thing in the Constitution as no state minister. So let's get that.
He's the helper.
Let's get that out of the way.
He's the assistant. He helps.
No. Listen to me carefully.
Mm-hmm.
You heard what I just said?
He's a helper, though.
But I don't care what else they call him.
Mm.
There's no such thing in the Constitution as no state minister. That's it.
Professor, I have another phone call who wants to engage you, but I'll read this first. It says, great show as usual. A quick question. How come they don't teach Constitution and labor laws in high school? Because I'm 45 and I have no clue of my rights, and I know is I plead the fifth. All I know is I plead the fifth. I think that's American Constitution. And that don't work in the Bahamas. But the point I want to mention to the texter, our schools are busy trying to have our kids be able to read and write. We are challenged. And now you want to move from being able to read and write and get us to the 5th grade and now teach the Constitution. It's kind of odd.
You cannot overlook what that's the text who sent that in?
That's a texter.
Yeah, but that's an important point. He has a valid point. He has an important point. Ask those people who we gave power to from January the 10th, 1967 up to now. Because you see, that's why the country is such shambles today.
But Professor, the teacher's busy. The people don't know how to read at a 5th grade level, nor math. Let's learn that first.
That is no excuse.
And everything else is gravy.
No, sir. That is no excuse.
But anyway, I have the caller here. I want the caller engage you. Let the caller engage you. Go ahead, caller. Can you hear me?
Hey, thank you, Mr. David. Jesus sake, thank you. So to give somebody else a break, but I could more say, look at Mr. Newry, one day, back in the 70s, I remember this very clearly, we talking about constitutional rights and what you've been taught, right? Back in the 70s, the latest 70s, when drugs started becoming very popular in New Providence, I should say. I remember one evening, Mr. Newry, we lived on Madeira Street. One evening, I couldn't really sleep, so I went out in my pajamas now, sitting on our wall on the main Madeira Street, with the front door open rather late at night, just having a cigarette. And the police car passed. I think it was Mr. John Crawley and somebody else in the car. They passed, they slowed down, and they reversed back. They came there, they say, young man, what you doing on that wall? I say, sir, I can't sleep. I just come out here to have a cigarette. I say, see, I live right here, Mr. Crawley. See, my door even open. The man say, sir, would you get inside that house, please? I say, sir, this is my wall. You know, and I'm sitting on my wall. He say, sir, would you rather sit on that wall or sit on the green bench down by Clay? Get inside your house. Now, my constitutional right, I think, was infringed on. Because I have the right to sit on my wall at any time of the day. That's my wall. But a policeman did that to me, you know, back in, but being in fear, being arrested and maybe beaten at night, I went inside. I said that to say this. We can't break a law in our country, no matter how small it is, we'll be arrested and beaten. But back to what Mr. Sidney was talking about and what you keep trying to find out. How could foreigners come in my land do anything they want to and nobody touch them? How could they come and build homes on land that is not theirs and nobody touch them? How could they hook up electricity from poles without proper permission? No building codes, no building permit, steal water, put feces and urine in our water table, and nobody touched them. And people say, we hate these people. We don't hate these people. I don't believe I have hate more than my buddy. What I hate is people coming into my country, breaking our laws, and nobody doing nothing about it. For over 40, we going to celebrate 50 years. 50 years, and we gone backwards. A friend of mine just came back into Providence after 20 years in the United States. He said he grew up in Hay Street. And he said, Sparky, I went back to my stomping grounds. And Hay Street is worse off now than it was 20 years ago. I said, my God, I thought they paid him couple out. He said, yeah, but check about the crime and the dereliction of all kind of cars and things all over people's property and things, and nobody doing.
Let me engage, thank you very much for your call. Let me engage, Professor. I understand what you were trying to say. So this is what I interpreted, Professor Thompson, right? His concern is Bahamians are being arrested for squatting. Bahamians are being arrested for building house without permits. Bahamians are arrested for various crimes. However, we have a immigrant group who seems to know the laws better than a typical Bahamian, and they're able to pass and traverse, and especially recently where the committees are being formed. If you illegally attach your electricity to your house, automatically your lights are turned off and you're prosecuted. But recently we see the minister saying that a committee is going to be formed in order to turn off light that are in an illegal shanty town. Can we, the public, do a judicial review and sue the government saying that something is wrong? This is unconstitutional what you're doing. I assume that's what he's trying to say.
Article 24.1 is right there, Brother Newry.
And explain Article 24.1.
24.1 has to deal with people coming together to protect their interests. I understand what Sparky is saying, and he has some validity to what he's saying. But we must not keep arguing and bickering over that. It's time that the Bahamian people take action in a given community with the government of the day to deal with these issues that are plaguing Bahamians. Because obviously, the fellows who are being elected are not doing anything about it, so you got to put pressure on them. The same thing is happening in my own area. But if we keep complaining, because see, you could see there is a blatant violation of statute law and constitutional law. And the authorities are not moving on it, so you got to put pressure on them to get them to do so. There's a lot that the Bahamians can do, you know. Give us some ideas on what we can do. Pardon?
Give us some ideas on what we can do.
Let me put it to you like this. If you have an interest protect, people in a given area coming together to discuss what course of action they're prepared to take, they can throw the ideas out, put it together, see what is willing that they are prepared to do. I cannot say on this show right at this point that you should do this or you should do that. What I can do is point you to the Constitution, which gives you the authority to act on your behalf and in your best interest. Now, if you are serious about that, then it's a matter of people coming together to determine what course of action or actions they're prepared to take to protect their interests. It could apply to a constituency. It could apply to a situation like Sparky spoke to. But the point is, if we do nothing about it, then you see these people are going to keep on behaving the way they're doing. And some of them ought to know better. And the only thing that's going to change them is pressure in the right place at the right time. So Article 24.1 gives you, the Bahamian people, in cooperation with each other, the authority to protect your interests. If you have an interest to protect, then you have to fight it.
I have another caller, Professor.
Yes, sir.
Let's have the caller engage you. Producer, patch the caller through. Go ahead, caller. Caller, can you hear me? Caller, are you there? No, you going? Okay, I have another text here. Says, does the UN, United Nations, and these other treaties that the Bahamas signed trumps our Constitution?
No, they can't. Impossible. Article 2 knocks that right down.
What I know for a while we've been talking about. Oh God, the name just escapes me. Just going to ask about it. Where we join trade. I just saw it recently. You know, the trade boundaries to join the whole world. And the name escaped me. Forgive me. But the question where I wanted to ask: suppose that treaty that is signed, which we're trying to ascend to, right? Suppose some of the treaty offense goes against the Constitution. What can happen then? And hopefully I'll find the right word for that.
I'm going to quote Article 2 to you. It says, any other law that is inconsistent with this Constitution, this Constitution shall prevail. Newry, you can't get it clearer than that. The problem in our country is we always looking to see what people are doing in other countries. They ain't checking for us, you know. They're not checking for our own business. That's the problem with Bahamian people. Are we prepared to protect our interests? I mentioned that to you, Article 24.1. Are we so caught up with what other people say, what other people are doing, we don't even have time to protect our own interests?
I wanted to say the treaty I was talking about is WTO and ascending to the WTO. I wanted to know if it's the signing of it or joining to it or the signing to it offends the constitution and it breaks.
If
Go ahead.
anything, see, this is why the government has to be very careful what you're signing to or who they send to sign things, because only a couple of people know about these things, you know. The average Bahamian doesn't know a thing about these things that people are signing on behalf of the Bahamas. But if anything contravenes the Constitution, it is null and void. Any section or the entire thing may contravene the Constitution, it is null and void. It has no standing whatsoever. And that's the problem with us as a people. We don't even understand how important our own Constitution is. We undermine the Constitution. One fellow told me it's a piece of paper. When people see you don't respect your own supreme law, what do you think they can do to you? They can put all kind of crap on top of you. And it's unfortunate that that's happening where the government of the Bahamas has these personalities signing things. What the hell, they don't know what they're signing because they're not knowledgeable about what the Constitution says. And so we run into problems. Then they come around and say, but you signed it. Sign what? That's why we have to be careful who you're hooking yourself up with. You see, we have something right in our country right now. What the governor of the Bahamas was prancing and dancing and saying all manner of things. And then all of a sudden they got dropped right in one deep hole.
Professor,
you didn't say anything about that?
Professor, I'm going to take a short break, and when I come, I'm going to go to the callers who want to engage you, but I'm going to take a short break right now. This has been Guardian Radio in the AM with C.A. Newry, and I have Professor Sidney Walter MacArthur Thompson on the radio. We'll be right back.
Remember when Zoom was just a sound effect? When your living room wasn't your gym? When a cough didn't scare people away? That was the good old days. And thankfully, they are coming back. As things return to normal, remember it is essential to be fully immunized against all vaccine-preventable diseases like COVID-19, diphtheria, tetanus, measles, and influenza. This message is brought to you by PAHO WHO, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, the Caribbean Development Bank, the Government of Canada, and the United States of America.
Here we go. J.S. Johnson Insurance Agents are the best. Reliable service, we've been on the scene, protected since 1919. peace of mind.
Love the show? Want to give your support? Become a sponsor today. Call 302-2300 for our rates and packages. That's 302-2300. Become a sponsor on Guardian Radio 96.9 FM. Fresh news, smart talk, all day.
Welcome to Guardian Radio AM. We're talking to Professor Sidney Thompson, and we have a caller on the line who wants to engage him. So let me put that caller through so Professor can engage him. Go ahead, callers. Thank you for your patience, by the way.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah,
Hello, hello.
I've been waiting for a long time.
I know. That's why I come straight to you.
Yeah, now don't let Mr. McCarter Thompson mix you up with the police prosecution and the prosecutors and the attorney general officer. Roger Thompson's a senior police officer. I remember that young man. He came to when Mr. Wicken Ingham office in the early 90s. When he came past, he used to come to work every day with the Bible in his hand. Roger Thompson is deal with the witness and the attorney general officer, and he like Wayne Man would say, he's a lawyer of 14 years, so he can prosecute those breach of bail when those fellas with those ankle bracelets. But he's not a normal. He's not just like a sergeant or inspector in the magistrate court. This man is the working attorney general office. I mean, he might still be working there. You understand, Mr. Newry?
Yeah, I hear you.
So he can do exactly what Wayne Monroe said, or what Gaskin said. Gavin Gaskin said he could do. He could put him to prosecute when these fellas, they gone out on bail for 1 or 2 murders, and then they cutting the ankle bracelets and they ain't charging it to the police. Thing of battle them can't find it. Commission battle them can't find over there yet. They need to go to the backside and wait up. I don't care what McCarter Thompson says. Go and wait until the case, because you can't be out on bail and you don't want the police to know where you are, or people who monitoring them who are on bail. So Roger Thompson could prosecute them, and I'm sure most of them will go back and sit their backside in jail until their case come up, because most of them on bail for 2 and 3 and 4 more than you.
Thank you very much, caller. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man.
And
so don't let us McCarter Thompson stress you all around, but he should know Roger Thompson too.
Okay, thank you very much. And I know Professor Thompson didn't mention any of all of that, so I appreciate your patience. But my concern is, right, still, what at the end happens if you're found not guilty, right, and you spend 5 years in jail waiting, right? Something is direly wrong with that. And this is why we have a system of bail for it. And mind you, I'm saying that why can't we enact laws? If you tamper with your monitoring device, there should be a law that says if you tamper with it, you go through trial and you go for a sentence for that. If you didn't check in, have a law for that and say you breached the law of not checking in, and therefore you get sentenced for that. But I don't think that it's supposed to be automatic. That bail is denied. And there's no law that exists to propel you to be jailed, detained for a long period of time.
Yeah, you have a valid point, because the thing is, I'm not questioning the qualifications of any person who works with the police or the Attorney General.
Yeah, I know that.
I'm not even interested in that. What I am interested in is what the Constitution says. And this is where we get all mixed up. And I'm not trying to mix up anybody, because the Constitution speaks to the Office of Commissioner of Police.
Mm-hmm.
The Constitution speaks to the Office of Director of Public Prosecutions. The Constitution speaks to the Office of Attorney General. Now, the Minister of National Security, well, that could come up, but a minister, it ain't specifically have that in the Constitution, but he can be a minister. The Prime Minister can appoint somebody Minister for National Security. What I am saying is, we shouldn't have this kind of mixing up. The lines should be clearly spelled out. Where you go, what you to do, if this would happen, this is supposed to happen, etc., etc. as long as you can deal with these personalities, as long as you do not violate their constitutional rights as spelled out in the Constitution. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying who should get in there and who needs to do this and how many years they have. That doesn't mean anything to me. That means nothing. You just know we got plenty of people dying.
Yes.
I know that much.
And therefore we need a response.
We need a response, yes. And you said the Attorney General hasn't said anything. So what's happening with him?
I have another question for you, Professor.
Yes, sir.
What is a theocratic democratic state? I've seen you said that phrase once or twice before. And I say theocratic sounds like religion. So I perhaps the professor's kind of off. So I said, since I have you online, I'll ask you what you mean by that. The Bahamas is a theocratic democratic state.
The Bahamas, according to the Constitution, is to be a theocratic democratic state. All you do is check your preamble. You'll see it right there.
You have to explain that to me.
Of your Constitution.
You got to explain that to me.
Huh?
You have to go in detail. You have to explain that to me.
That's why I'm telling you where to find it. I can explain it too. I ain't going to leave you hanging.
Go ahead.
If you are a nation under God, because the people of this country didn't want to build a nation without God. Is God in our national life? Is God in the governance of this country? When we have to make decisions to deal with national issues that affect the Bahamian people, where is the knowledge of God in all of that? Where is the Word of God in it? Where are those Christian values, spiritual principles, spiritual values? Where are they? It's just sitting there on the shelf? No, those things are to be activated within the decisions that the government of the Bahamas is making. It talks about a national commitment. Now, I'm going to tell you one thing right off the top. The government of the Bahamas has never done anything from the time of July the 10th, 1972, right on up to now. These national commitments that we're supposed to be living by. The government ought to take the lead in enforcing those national commitments and seeing to it that the people carry out those things. Because, you see, that's the right for your freedoms. Your freedoms are guaranteed. National commitment to self-discipline. We don't have that. You see all this murder and killing and mayhem in the country? Where is the national commitment to self-discipline? Why is the government not pushing that? That will have reduced some crime. But we're not taking it seriously. We always keep hearing about certain initiatives. The police always talk about certain initiatives and this thing and that thing. And you see the same thing going over and over and over again. I don't know what kind of initiatives they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see any improvement. They keep getting cars, they keep getting this, they keep getting that. No commissioner's ever said he had enough things to work with. They always get the assistance from the government of the Bahamas monetarily to be able to help them to do what they're supposed to do. But the murder rate shooting through the roof. So what's happening?
Professor,
and of course, the judiciary has a role to play in this too now.
Mm-hmm.
Where does the judiciary fit in? But if there's going to be a conflict between the judiciary and the police, as we have it now, that's going to be a problem. That's a big problem in the country. The government of Bahamas need to fix this crap. Because it's not going to help any of us in the country. We'd like to sit back, just like another matter, big matter that we have in this country, and there's no constitutional support for it, but it's been lingering for 50 years and more. So what are we doing? What is the responsibility of a government? What is the responsibility of a representative in the House of Assembly? The Constitution tells about them things, you know. But I don't see any real effort being made to make sure that these national commitments that are entrenched in the Constitution, what we ought to be living by, to make life better for the Bahamian people. We have a problem right there, Brother Newry.
Mm-hmm. Professor, I have one more caller. Let me patch the caller through. Go ahead, caller.
The reason why I called back, right? Mr. Thompson, all right. They're a bunch of liars. Theocratic means God govern. Thank you.
Okay.
I think that that word he used, I would not say that about the government of the Bahamas. That's a strong word. It should not be used on air. And I won't use it. I will simply point out when the government is in error and they can make the appropriate changes. The people have to just put pressure on them. I think in a lot of cases they just don't know better. But it takes people like me to tell them better. We are to be a theocratic, democratic state. That is clearly spelled out in your Constitution. If we do not have God in our business, our national business, we're doomed for failure.
When you say theocratic, don't have to be a Christian God, right? It could be like a Muslim theocratic.
Wait, hold on now.
No, can't be a Muslim theocratic state.
A Muslim?
I mean, you say God.
That's not in the Constitution.
Guardian Muslim. I mean.
The Constitution says Christian values.
Yeah, but values
Values
can be interpreted as anything.
No.
Muslims
don't
and Jews and Christians have the same values.
We know what those spiritual values are. That has to deal with the Holy Bible. Don't get this mixed up with them funny things now.
Torah type.
We don't have no funny books, you know. We don't go by funny books. No. We go by the Holy Bible, the written word of God. That's the spiritual values we're talking about. Not them other fellows who write some funny books and say they're spiritual.
I have about 3 or 4 minutes. I want you to comment on Article 7.1 in the Constitution and why we need
Article 7.1, that's an interesting one. It has caused a lot of controversy in the country, and I'll say this about it. Article 7.1 has to deal with persons in the country born neither whose parents are Bahamian. Now, the question rises is, some people say, well, the Constitution didn't say legal or illegal. But I ask one question. Can the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Bahamas support illegality? If it can, and it does, then you might as well forget about it. Because it means nothing.
But
it's a weightless piece of document.
Surely illegality is subjective, right?
No. It's according to law.
And we know that laws can be changed. Today it's against the law and tomorrow it's legal.
Constitutional law don't change like that. The Constitution tells you how it's supposed to be changed. These are entrenched. When you check all the articles relating to citizenship, as I'm going through on another radio station, I have said to the Bahamian people, there is absolutely no evidence whatsoever in the Constitution for this conundrum that we're in with a group of people who were never part of the British Commonwealth of Nations. Never were. But persons who were born in the Bahamas to persons who were here legally, but neither of who they're not Bahamian citizens, at the age of 18, but before they turn 19. Now, you see, you got 1 year window of opportunity. You cannot change that by a statute law.
So, Professor, we're out of time, right? What I'll do is I'll have an entire show on Article 7.1. Now, I know you'll be contentious because I can disagree with you. But I
you have a right to disagree.
I will hear your views on Article 7.1 and we'll have a whole show on that. Is that good?
No, that's fine. I can give you what the Constitution says.
Okay. This has been Guardian Radio AM, and we were talking to Professor Sidney Thompson, and we're just talking about the Constitution in general. We'll again see you next week. Have a wonderful day.